International Short Stories, Volume 2, English Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynn Thompson. International Short Stories, Volume 2, English Stories. Edited by William Patten. Section 15. The Courting of Dinah Shadd, by Rudyard Kipling. Part 1. All day I had followed at the heels of a pursuing army, engaged on one of the finest battles that ever camp of exercise beheld. 30,000 troops had by the wisdom of the government of India been turned loose over a few thousand square miles of country to practice in peace what they would never attempt in war. The Army of the South had finally pierced the center of the Army of the North, and was pouring through the gap, hotfoot, to capture a city of strategic importance. Its front extended fanwise, the sticks being represented by regiments strung out along the line of route backward to the divisional transport columns, and all the lumber that trails behind an army on the move. On its right the broken left of the Army of the North was flying in mass, chased by the Southern horse and hammered by the Southern guns, till these had been pushed far beyond the limits of their last support. Then the flying Army of the North sat down to rest, while the commandant of the pursuing force telegraphed that he held it in check and observation. Unluckily he did not observe that 3 miles to his right flank a flying column of Northern horse, with a detachment of Goorkhas and British troops, had been pushed round, as fast as the falling light allowed, to cut across the entire rear of the Southern army, to break, as it were, all the ribs of the fan where they converged, by striking at the transport reserve, ammunition, and artillery supplies. Their instructions were to go in, avoiding the few scouts who might not have been drawn off by the pursuit, and create sufficient excitement to impress the Southern army with the wisdom of guarding their own flank and rear before they captured cities. It was a pretty maneuver, neatly carried out. Speaking for the 2nd Division of the Second Army, our first intimation of it was at twilight, when the artillery were laboring in deep sand, most of the escort were trying to help them out, and the main body of the infantry had gone on. A Noah's Ark of elephants, camels, and the mixed menagerie of an Indian transport train bubbled and squealed behind the guns, when there rose up from nowhere in particular British infantry to the extent of 3 companies, who sprung to the heads of the gun horses, and brought all to a standstill amid oaths and cheers. "How's that, umpire?" said the major commanding the attack, and with one voice the drivers and limber gunners answered "Hout!" while the colonel of artillery sputtered. "All your scouts are charging our main body," said the major. "Your flanks are unprotected for 2 miles. I think we've broken the back of this division, and listen, there go the Goorkhas." A weak fire broke from the rear guard more than a mile away, and was answered by cheerful howlings. The Goorkhas, who should have swung clear of the 2nd Division, had stepped on its tail in the dark, but, drawing off, hastened to reach the next line, which lay almost parallel to us, 5 or 6 miles away. Our column swayed and surged irresolutely, 3 batteries, the divisional ammunition reserve, the baggage, and a section of hospital and bearer corps. The commandant ruefully promised to report himself cut up to the nearest umpire, and commending his cavalry and all other cavalry to the care of Eblis, toiled on to resume touch with the rest of the division. "We'll bivouac here to-night," said the major. "I have a notion that the Goorkhas will get caught. They may want us to reform on. Stand easy till the transport gets away." A hand caught my beast's bridle and led him out of the choking dust. A larger hand deftly canted me out of the saddle, and 2 of the hugest hands in the world received me sliding. Pleasant is the lot of the special correspondent who falls into such hands as those of Privates Mulvaney, Ortheris, and Learoyd. "And that's all right," said the Irishman, calmly. We thought we'd find you somewhere hereby. Is there anything of yours in the transport? Orth'ris'll fetch it out." Ortheris did fetch it out from under the trunk of an elephant in the shape of a servant and an animal, both laden with medical comforts. The little man's eyes sparkled. "If the brutal and licentious soldiery of these parts get sight of the thruck," said Mulvaney, making practised investigation, "they'll loot everything. They're bein' fed on iron filins and dog biscuit these days. But glory's no compensation for a belly ache. Praise be, we're here to protect you, sorr. Beer, sausage, bread soft, and that's a curiosity soup in a tin, whiskey by the smell of it, and fowls. Mother of Moses! but ye take the field like a confectioner. 'Tis scand'lous." "'Ere's a orficer," said Ortheris, significantly, when the sergeant's done lushin'. "The private may clean the spot." I bundled several things into Mulvaney's haversack before the Major's hand fell on my shoulder, and he said, tenderly, "Requisitioned for the Queen's service. Wolseley was quite wrong about special correspondents. They are the best friends of the soldier. Come and take pot luck with us to-night." And so it happened, amid laughter and shoutings, that my well-considered commissariat melted away to reappear on the mess table, which was a waterproof sheet spread on the ground. The flying column had taken 3 days' ration with it, and there be few things nastier than government rations, especially when government is experimenting with German toys. Erbswurst, tinned beef of surpassing tinniness, compressed vegetables, and meat biscuits may be nourishing, but what Thomas Atkins wants is bulk in his inside. The Major, assisted by his brother officers, purchased goats for the camp, and so made the experiment of no effect. Long before the fatigue party sent to collect brushwood had returned, the men were settled down by their valises, kettles, and pots had appeared from the surrounding country, and were dangling over fires as the kid and the compressed vegetables bubbled together. There rose a cheerful clinking of mess tins, outrageous demands for "a little more stuffing with that there liver wing," and gust on gust of chaff as pointed as a bayonet and as delicate as a gun butt. "The boys are in a good temper," said the Major. "They'll be singing presently. Well, a night like this is enough to keep them happy." Over our heads burned the wonderful Indian stars, which are not all pricked in on one plane, but, preserving an orderly perspective, draw the eye through the velvet darkness of the void up to the barred doors of heaven itself. The earth was a grey shadow more unreal than the sky. We could hear her breathing lightly in the pauses between the howling of the jackals, the movement of the wind in the tamarisks, and the fitful mutter of musketry fire leagues away to the left. A native woman in some unseen hut began to sing. The mail train thundered past on its way to Delhi, and a roosting crow cawed drowsily. Then there was a belt-loosening silence about the fires, and the even breathing of the crowded earth took up the story. The men, full fed, turned to tobacco and song, their officers with them. Happy is the subaltern who can win the approval of the musical critics in his regiment, and is honoured among the more intricate step-dancers. By him, as by him who plays cricket craftily, will Thomas Atkins stand in time of need, when he will let a better officer go on alone. The ruined tombs of forgotten Mussulman saints heard the ballad of Agra town, the Buffalo Battery, marching to Kabul, the long, long Indian day, the place where the Punkah Coolie died, and that crashing chorus which announces "Youth's daring spirit, manhood's fire, firm hand and eagle eye, must be a choir who would aspire to see the grey boar die." To-day, of all those jovial thieves who appropriated my commissariat, and lay and laughed round that waterproof sheet, not one remains. They went to camps that were not of exercise, and battles without umpires. Burma, the Soudan, and the frontier fever and fight took them in their time. I drifted across to the men's fires in search of Mulvaney, whom I found greasing his feet by the blaze. There is nothing particularly lovely in the sight of a private thus engaged after a long day's march, But when you reflect on the exact proportion of the might, majesty, dominion, and power of the British Empire that stands on those feet, you take an interest in the proceedings." "There's a blister, bad luck to it, on the heel," said Mulvaney. "I can't touch it. Prick it out, little man." Ortheris produced his housewife, eased the trouble with a needle, stabbed Mulvaney in the calf with the same weapon, and was incontinently kicked into the fire. "I've bruck the best of my toes over you, ye grinning child of disruption," said Mulvaney, sitting cross-legged and nursing his feet. Then, seeing me, "Oh, it's you, sorr. Be welcome, and take that marauding scut's place. Jock, hold him down on the cinders for a bit." But Ortheris escaped and went elsewhere as I took possession of the hollow he had scraped for himself and lined with his greatcoat. Learoyd, on the other side of the fire, grinned affably, and in a minute fell fast asleep. "There's the height of politeness for you," said Mulvaney, lighting his pipe with a flaming branch. "But Jock's eaten half a box of your sardines at one gulp, and I think the tin too. What's the best wid you, sorr, and how'd you happen to be on the losing side this day when we captured you?" "The Army of the South is winning all along the line," I said. "Thin that line's the hangman's rope, savin' your presence. You'll learn to morrow how we retreated to draw 'em on before we made them trouble, and that's what a woman does. By the same token, we'll be attacked before the dawnin', and it would be better not to slip your boots. How do I know that? By the light of pure reason. Here are 3 companies av us ever so far inside of the enemy's flank, and a crowd of roarin', tearin', and squealin' cavalry gone on just to turn out the whole nest of them. Of course, the enemy will pursue by brigades like as not, and then we'll have to run for it. Mark my words, I'm of the opinion of Polonius when he said, 'Don't fight wid ivry scut for the pure joy of fightin', but if ye do, knock the nose of him first and frequent.' We ought to have gone and helped the Goorkhas." "But what do you know about Polonius?" I demanded. This was a new side of Mulvaney's character. "All that Shakespeare ever wrote, and a dale more than the gallery shouted," said the man of war, carefully lacing his boots. "Did I not tell you and Silver's Theatre in Dublin when I was younger than I am now, and a patron of the drama? Old Silver would never pay actor, man or woman, their just dues, and by consequence his companies was collapsible at the last minute. Then the boys would clamour to take a part, and oft as not old Silver made them pay for the fun. Faith, I've seen Hamlet played wid a new black eye, and the Queen as full as a cornucopia. I remember onct Hogan, that listed in the Black Tyrone as was shot in South Africa, he seduced old Silver into giving him Hamlet's part instead of me, that had a fine fancy for rhetoric in those days. Of course I went into the gallery and began to fill the pit with other people's hats, and I passed the time of day to Hogan, walking through Denmark like a hamstrung mule wid a pall on his back. 'Hamlet,' says I, 'there's a hole in your heel. Pull up your stockings, Hamlet,' says I. 'Hamlet, Hamlet, for the love of decency, drop that skull and pull up your stockings.' The whole house began to tell him that. He stopped his soliloquisms mid between. 'My stocking may be coming down, or they may not,' says he, screwing his eye into the gallery, for well he knew who I was. 'But after the performance is over, me and the ghost'll trample the guts out of you, Terence, wid your ass's bray. And that's how I came to know about Hamlet. Arrah, those days, those days! Did you iver have unendin' divilment, and nothing to pay for it in your life, sir?' 'Never without having to pay,' I said. 'That's thrue. 'Tis mane, when you consider on it. But it's the same wid horse or fut. A headache if you drink, and a bellyache if you eat too much, and a heartache to keep you down. Faith, the beast only gets the colic, and he's the lucky man.' He dropped his head and stared into the fire, fingering his moustache for a while. From the far side of the bivouac the voice of Corbett Nolan, senior subaltern of B Company, uplifted itself in an ancient and much appreciated song of sentiment, the men moaning melodiously behind him. 'The north wind blew coldly, she dropped from that hour, my own little Kathleen, my sweet little Kathleen, Kathleen, my Kathleen, Kathleen O'More. with 45 O's in the last word. Even at that distance you might have cut the soft South Irish accent with a shovel. "For all we take we must pay, but the price is cruel high," murmured Mulvaney when the chorus had ceased. "What's the trouble?" I said gently, for I knew that he was a man of an unextinguishable sorrow. "Here now," said he, "you know what I am now. I know what I meant to be at the beginning of my service. I've told you time and again, and what I have not, Dinah Shadd has. And what am I? Oh, Mother Mary of Heaven, an old, drunken, untrustable baste of a private, that has seen the regiment change out from colonel to drummer boy, not once nor twice, but scores o' times, ay, scores, and me not so near getting promotion as in the fust, and me livin' on and kapin clear o' clink, not by my own good conduck, but the kindness of some orficer boy young enough to be son to me. Do I not know it? Can I not tell when I'm passed over at parade, though I'm rocking full o' liquor and ready to fall all in one piece, such as even a sucking child might see, because, oh, 'tis only old Mulvaney, and when I'm let off in the orderly room, through some trick of the tongue and a ready answer, and the old man's mercy, is it smilin' I feel when I fall away and go back to Dinah Shadd, thryin' to carry out all off as a joke? Not I. 'Tis hell to me, dumb hell through it all. And next time, whin the fit comes, I will be as bad again. Good cause the regiment has to know me for the best soldier in it. Better cause have I to know meself for the worst man. I'm only fit to tache the new drafts what I'll never learn meself, and I'm sure as though I heard it, that the minute one of these pink-eyed recruities gets away from my mind you now, and listen to this, Jim boy, sure I am that the sergeant holds me up to join him for a warnin'. So I tache, as they say at musketry instruction, by direct and ricochet fire. Lord be good to me, for I have stood some trouble." "Lie down and go to sleep," said I, not being able to comfort or advise. "You're the best man in the regiment, and, next to Ortheris, the biggest fool. Lie down, and wait till we're attacked. What force will they turn out? Guns, think you?" "Thry that with your lords and ladies, twistin' and turnin' the talk, though you mint it well. You could say nothing to help me, and yet you never knew what cause I had to be what I am." "Begin at the beginning and go on to the end," I said royally, "but rake up the fire a bit first." I passed Ortheris's bayonet for a poker. "That shows how little you know what to do," said Mulvaney, putting it aside. "Fire takes all the heart out of the steel, and the next time, maybe, that our little man is fighting for his life, his braddle'll break, and you'll have killed 'em, meanin' no more than to keep yourself warm. 'Tis a recruity's trick that. Pass the cleanin' rod, sir." I snuggled down, abashed, and after an interval the low, even voice of Mulvaney began. Section 15